So even though we have been talking a little bit about the arrays and making a method out of it, this can also be incorporated in a class. So what I did over here is basically create a class, and I have some private methods. Private instance variables, class number and class name, and then I created an empty constructor, public classes, and also I created some getSet methods to input the values into these private variables, because remember these are private, so that's why I need the public setGet methods to input all these values. So I can write comments and say this is an empty default constructor, and these are all public accessor and mutator methods, also curly set get methods. Okay, and then I also have another constructor. So as you can see, I actually have overloaded constructor. I have one over here and one over here, and if I want, I can move this one over here. So I can use this default constructor, public classes, and in that case I'll have to use the setGet method, or I can call this particular I can call this particular constructor here, and in this case the signature of this particular constructor is that it takes in two arguments. One is an integer, one is a string, and of course the number goes into the class number and the name goes into the class name. And also I have a public void display, and with this display method I'm just going to display the class number and the class name. So this is my classes, and then I define another class called testing classes. So this is my testing classes. Look what I did in my testing classes. Before I go into anything, I actually created another method called getValue. So this is a static method, just like I created a static method in my making methods here. So I created a static method. It's public, and it is classes public static classes getValue. So getValue is the name of the method, which does not take any argument, and it returns an object of the type classes. Now what is classes? Classes is defined over here, right? So this classes, or this class is my classes over here, which has my default constructor, setGet method, and display method. So look what I do over here. In my classes method, I actually define some of these variables, int cNumber, string cName, and then I define a temporary object which is of the type classes, which is using the new class. So of course, which signature is this one using? So this one is using, I can say using the default constructor signature. Okay, and the default constructor signature is this one right here, right? So public classes and no argument over here. So I created this temp object with no argument. Look what I do over here. I ask to enter the class number, and I take the value in with the next int method and store it in cNumber. Now as soon as I take this value in, I have to actually do a scanner, and what I did was I defined it as a static scanner so that it can be used anywhere in this program. Okay, if I would create my static scanner if I would create my scanner object inside my classes, then it's only, the scope is only within this method. Okay, so that's why instead of creating multiple scanner objects, I basically created a static scanner object right here. So with this, I take the value in, and then I ask for the class number. I take the value in and I store it in C number. Okay, so here's the C number, and then using this object called temp object, I associate that with the set class number, which is my public method right here, set class number. Remember, this is a non-static method. Okay, so that's why I need to associate that with an object called temp object. However, when I create static method like this get value, I don't need to associate that with an object. But since this one set class number is a non-static method coming from this class, I have to associate that with the temp object. So I use this and associate the C number, and then I ask for this class name, take the value in. Again, using my set class name, I put the value in. Now, one thing I told you earlier that this is going to return a class. So that's why I'm returning a temp object. So whenever I create a temp object, if I use the default constructor, it's going to ask me this question, input the value. Now I define another static method which says display object, and it's going to take in one of the objects, so classes C. Okay, so every time I call this display object, it's a static and a void method. I just need to say the class that I pass through it, I associate that here. Now, what I do in my testing class method is I have a static main, and first off, I create an array object. So remember, this particular classes object has two things in there. It has a class number and it has a class name. Okay, so this is the size. So I can do this. I can do class object 0, 1, and 2 because this is, remember, this is my size. Okay, so of course new classes, and when I use this signature, which signature am I using? I'm actually using this particular one right here. Okay, so now this is not the default constructor. This is the overloaded constructor that takes 2 arguments. Okay, so once I write this, I create a object of classes. I can associate values in the individual element and pass this C number, integer and a string, okay, and then of course I can do this to display the value out. So I'm going to say class object 0.display. Where is the display method? The display method is right here. Remember, this is non-static, so that's why I need a class object. So this is an object.display. So I can show all the values over here by using the overloaded constructor signature. Now, I can also do something like this, where in this case I am not creating taking the value, I'm not creating the value by doing something like this. Okay, new classes. So this is my size, and what I'm doing is, in that case, I'm going to use the new object and use this get value, and then use the display object associated with the new object that I just created. So I can do, since I do 2 and my size is 2, so my new object 0 dot get value, new object 1 dot get value to get the values out. Okay, now can I not create something with a for loop? Absolutely. Okay, I'm just breaking it down part by part to show you how I can do this thing. So in the first one, I get my class number 1, 2, and 3. So these are my 3 classes, which says Java Programming Database Management. And then in this one, when I'm using the get value method, this is where I'm asking to enter the class number. I'm going to say 1101, and it's going to ask me the class name. I'm going to say ENC, and it says, okay, my value that I took in is 1101 and the class name is ENC. Enter the class number. Again, I'm going to say 1105, name is MAC. So now I have a class number MSc 1105. Now, why did I not get the same thing? Because look, I actually do 0 and 0. If I really want to display this value, I got to keep on writing my new object. I need to change my new object because I just created one, and display those values there. So with that, I hope you have a basic understanding of how I'm combining some of these simple Java array, adding some methods, creating a class, and then creating an object of a class, and how I'm inputting these values. And of course, I can always go in and ask for more. I can ask to make it more interactive, where, you know, this new object 1, you know, I can put it in a for loop to keep on asking and repeating the same thing. So I can do anything that I pretty much want with this kind of a structure. Thank you.